Hey, you made it past the pro wrestling, around the basketball, didn't get distracted by the Rick and Morty memes. That means you're inside my cage mind. Hi, I'm Micah Frankl. Welcome into this MMA craze place, and boy, do we have a big show to get to. I said you made it past the pro wrestling, but real quick, let me fill you in. Last week, big week for WWE. NXT Stand and Deliver Takeover, their huge event during WrestleMania week, and then WrestleMania. So it's 4 huge nights of premium pro wrestling, not to mention what Impact Wrestling and AEW does weekly, which I'm also obsessed with. Obviously, I said you had to make a pass there. Combine that with a slew of events to talk about, also getting the opportunity to co-host the Sports Bar on Monday with Michael Carlisle on 95.9 FM and 610 AM, the Sports Animal in Albuquerque, left me a little pressed on time, unable to do the video recording of the Caged Minds MMA Show, which gets put up on YouTube. So without that time, we're going to make today's show bigger and put the two together. So this is going to be Micah Frankl's Caged Mind and the Caged Minds MMA Show. So we'll have more news and results than I normally bring you on this topic-based podcast. So let's get started. And hey guys, always remember, please hit that like button on the episode, share the episode, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the podcast if you would be so inclined. I'd appreciate it greatly. Also, if you haven't done so in a while, visit the website, cageminds.com. The YouTube channel is Caged Minds MMA Show. On Facebook, it's Caged Minds Combat Sports News. We're on Twitter, at Caged Minds MMA. My personal one is at Frankl Micah. Talk a lot more basketball, pro wrestling on that one. And then also on Instagram, it's CageMinds_CSN. That's the for Combat Sports News is what CSN stands for. So what do we want to talk about today? First topic in my mind running around here is the fate of the middleweight division right now and what the layout looks like, because we're coming off of UFC on ABC2, a short notice fight for Kevin Holland jumping in, replacing a Darren Till who suffered a broken collarbone, and Marvin Vettori, the Italian Dream, the heavy favorite, as expected, and as everybody else saw the Kevin Holland-Derek Brunson fight and went right to a takedown and wrestling-based attack, grounding up Kevin Holland and honestly inflicting more damage than what Derek Brunson did. It was one-way traffic for at least 4 rounds. It was a record for Vettori, and I think a new middleweight record, 11 takedowns in a 5-round fight. It's a 5-fight win streak for the Italian fighter, who climbs now up 3 spots in the rankings, up to number 3. And that's why we need to talk about where the middleweight division is at. Obviously, Israel Otasanya is awaiting his next challenger after a failed attempt to dethrone Jan Blachowicz of that light heavyweight title. You cannot fault Otasanya for trying to grab towards greatness, towards that historic status of champ status, trying to become the first guy to become middleweight and light heavyweight champion at the same time in UFC history. I know that La Unsung has done it over in 1 championship, but you cannot fault Adesanya for going for such a big move. But now he's got to come back after the loss to the middleweight division. And the question, because we have now had Derek Brunson ranked at number 5, and Marvin Vettori, number 3, both with ground and pound, 5-round decision victories over a Kevin Holland who, my gosh, how he has plummeted. Holland, 5-0 in 2020, the fighter of the year, looked like a prominent rising star. 5 victories, 3 of those victories came by knockout. So everybody was feeling really good about Holland. Too much trash talk against Derek Brunson, and then just really not enough time to improve the holes in his game. But it was an opportunity. It was a payday. And you know, the UFC, it was much appreciated by the UFC for Holland taking this short notice fight. So a lot of reasons why he shouldn't have taken the fight, a lot of reasons why he did take the fight, and a lot of reasons why you can understand how Vettori fought the way he did, but his defense was inexplicably bad. It left you feeling like with Darren Till's movement and punching power that he might have been able to put away Marvin Vettori just because his takedown defense is normally on par with being very good. That would leave you to think, because if Kelvin Gastelum, a wrestler, won the Ultimate Fighter, taking down middleweights, wasn't able to take down Darren Till, would Vettori have been able to do it if that was really his game plan? It wasn't the best Marvin Vettori we've seen in this 5-fight win streak. The lead up to the other 4 fights, much better versions of himself. That leads us again now, as I said, we're focusing on this middleweight division. And we're talking about Vettori, Brunson, and Robert Whittaker, who this weekend headlines the UFC Fight Night against Kelvin Gastelum. So Gastelum, by default, jumps into the title conversation due to the injuries that are going on in the division, with Darren Till breaking a collarbone, Jared Cannonier still being sidelined by his broken arm that he suffered against Robert Whittaker, and having to replace Paulo Costa. You got 3 of the top 15 out of action. Edwin Shabazian has lost his hype after the loss to Derek Brunson, so he's not a realistic title contender. And Jack Hermansson was eliminated from the picture by Marvin Vettori. It's kind of just letting you guys know what the landscape to the top 15 looks like there. Coming back down from 205 to 185, Otasanya's trainer had kind of insinuated that they were looking at Darren Till as their option for the next challenger. Till with the broken collarbone, that piece is off the playing table. Right now, that pawn is no longer in action. So it leaves you with those 4 guys that I mentioned. Whittaker, his last 2 wins are decisions over Darren Till. So I'm not sure how Darren Till was actually in the title conversation at all. And that decision over Jared Cannonier. Those fights came when Cannonier and Till were ranked 3 and 5, if not higher. So those are huge quality wins for Robert Whittaker. Not to mention Kelvin Gastelum is at number 8. If you beat Gastelum, that is 3 top 10 wins since losing the title. It was a second-round knockout loss to Israel Adesanya. But how much more work does Whittaker have to put in before getting back to that championship fight? He's a star in Australia. That should be enough leverage. A former champion, a star, a win streak with quality wins. All those boxes are checked. I would assume that the win against Gastelum assures us of a middleweight title rematch. But I can understand if you're Adesanya, I don't want to do rematches. Habib Nurmagomedov never did rematches. Unfortunately for Israel Adesanya, he's beat every guy I mentioned. His UFC tenure has included wins over all those gentlemen. His UFC tenure started with beating Rob Wilkinson, then was a split decision over Marvin Vettori. He knocked out Derek Brunson. Kelvin Gastelum and Otasanya at UFC 236 gave us one of the best middleweight title fights of all time. There was a second-round knockout of Whittaker. Off of those raw stats of how Adesanya won, Vettori's like it was a split decision. Gastelum pushed him harder than anybody and inflicted more damage on Adesanya than anybody else has. Both of those could warrant rematches. A 5-fight win streak now for Vettori, but Vettori's wins aren't of the same level of quality. Not to bash him, there is a Carl Roberson win, but his last performance was not stellar. And you do have a Jack Hermansson win on top of this Kevin Holland win, but the Kevin Holland win doesn't look as good for you, Vettori, even though you inflicted more damage, as it did for Brunson, who Brunson beat a guy with all the momentum in a 5-fight win streak. You beat a guy coming off of a loss who had a giant hole in his game, who was saving the fight night. Not the same quality of win for Vettori. Well, where does that leave us? Like I said, it leaves us with Otasanya needing to be comfortable with a rematch, which he honestly should be. After the hype, after the propaganda, you should have Otasanya comfortable with this rematch because he's had a extensive kickboxing career. Rematches are frequent in kickboxing. So let's get down to business. Who does he rematch? The longest win streak is Vettori of the 4. The best quality is Robert Whittaker. Well, I guess we have to wait to see how Whittaker versus Gastelum plays out. But let's give out some options just to see how it plays out. If there's a no contest, a draw, they rematch, obviously. That could be some weird stuff. Robert Whittaker wins. He should be fighting Israel Adesanya. That means that Marvin Vettori is free to fight Derek Brunson. Kelvin Gastelum pulls the upset. Gastelum and Vettori are training partners at King's MMA. I think that could, if Adesanya wanted to fight immediately, opens up Vettori versus Adesanya because they fought to a split decision, and then I would have Gastelum fighting against Brunson in a number 1 contenders bout because in recent memory, Gastelum has lost 3 of his last 4 fights. He did beat Ian Heinrich, and this would be a huge quality win, beating Whittaker, but I don't think that win and how close your fight was with Adesanya is enough weight to jump past Vettori, if you feel what I'm saying. And if you're Adesanya and you do want to wait, I honestly would say that pushes Vettori much further back down the rankings than he wants to be, possibly hoping to fight Jared Cannonier. So for best thing for everybody is if Whittaker wins, he fights Adesanya, Brunson and Vettori fight to line up the next title fight, and we keep going. Gastelum can throw a wrench in all those plans, and I think it would just land him a fight with Derek Brunson and would land Vettori a possibility of the title fight. If not, you're looking at the rankings saying, can Teal heal? Can Cannonier heal? How devastating is the injury to Costa? Because I'm just leaving him out of the conversation because I'm not sure how long he's going to be gone for because his name has not came up again. So Adesanya needs to get comfortable with the rematch in a middleweight division that is exciting and has been rejuvenated. Even though the names I mentioned have all lost to Adesanya, it was 2019 when he fought Gastelum. It was 2018 when he beat Vettori and Brunson. Both guys, Brunson and Vettori, the win streaks that they're on, 4 for Brunson, 5 for Vettori, are since that Adesanya fight. They've learned, they've evolved, they've taken their games to next level. And I think that just shows how good the matchmaking was and how, honestly, awesome Adesanya has been, that these are the quality of wins he has, but he's going to have to prove it again because those guys are the most logical challengers for the throne. To head over to our next topic, I guess we're heading towards a different kind of throne. It's almost the throne of the Mad Hatter. Or is it a throne of genius? I mean, just sure genius to another level of marketing expertise. I mean, you've got to, again, another round of applause, a bravo to the one and only Conor McGregor. I've been called the Conor McGregor troll and hater. Wear that badge of honor proud. This time, though, it's just sheer genius. I don't know if he has donated. I don't know if he hasn't donated. And if Floyd Mayweather, who is now clowning McGregor on Twitter, because supposedly we have a Conor McGregor who was unable to part with $500,000 as he said he would in a charitable donation to the Good Fight Foundation. Those allegations have become public knowledge from Dustin Poirier. Poirier putting it out on Twitter, putting the business out on the street, basically saying that the McGregor people have not returned any of the emails. What's going on? McGregor's like, well, you never sent us direct plans of how the money was going to be used. Guys, I have a list of how the money has been used in the past. It's like, oh, Conor would like to know how his $500,000 is going to be used by the Good Fight Foundation, providing years' worth of transitional car seats for families in need, provided over 1,000 warm meals for healthcare workers and first responders, has donated to several nonprofits, including the Lebanon Red Cross, following explosion in Beirut. Lebanon Red Cross, following the explosion in Beirut. Wow, that was really bad of me. Donating infant necessities to mothers displaced by hurricanes, providing supplies and assets of cleanups to hurricanes and the debris that it left in Lake Charles, hosting fundraisers to help out St. Jude's and donating toys and clothing to the hub in Lafayette. So there's many charities and organizations in which the Good Fight Foundation has helped, but yet Conor McGregor didn't feel that the plans he was receiving were specific enough to warrant his donation, so he denied. Well, that becomes a big problem when that's really not a good reason. You're not specifically telling me where the money is going. So you're kind of saying you feel like this may be shady because you're not knowing where the money is going. That's honestly what I feel like he's saying. But there's a lot of evidence to suggest that Dustin Poirier and the foundation that him and his wife run is not dirty. You necessitate that with Conor McGregor going on a tirade again throughout social media, into which I believe he called Poirier an inbred hillbilly. Dude, he said you didn't give a charitable donation that you publicly announced at a press conference in the UFC that you were going to give. And your way of rebuttaling is childish name-calling, kind of the rhetoric and hate speech that we're trying to eliminate. Inbred hillbilly? Come on, Conor. Be better than that. He got me. He got all of us. We're talking about it. UFC 261 is on the horizon. UFC 261 is around the corner. UFC 261 is 11 days away from when I am recording this podcast, before the UFC is at the VyStar Veterans Memorial Arena in Jacksonville, Florida, back in front of a sold-out crowd. And of course, Conor McGregor is making headlines and pulling attention from the next pay-per-view, from where the focus of the UFC should be promotionally, from where it should be from the media, from honestly what should be in the forefront of the minds of the fans. If you're not worried about Whittaker versus Gastelum this weekend, you have to be looking forward to next weekend and looking at Usman Masvidal rematch. Thinking, oh my gosh, this quick of a turnaround for Usman, just going on this ridiculous reign. Could he be a victim of burnout? Could there be too much pressure put on the champ? You have the women's title fight where you have Namajunas saying that for her Lithuanian heritage, she wants to dethrone the Chinese fighter Zhang Wei Li. When you have these kind of storylines, when you have this kind of drama being built, and I haven't even reminded you guys that Jessica Andrade is challenging Valentina Shevchenko for the women's flyweight title. Those three titles or title fights are what should be on the tip of our tongues, in the forefront of our MMA minds, and what we are most caring about. But instead, Conor McGregor has shrewdly distracted us all from UFC 261 and has put July 10th and UFC 264 on the marquee. The promotion that the UFC does is no power for the promoting machine that is Conor McGregor. I'll fight somebody else on July 10th, he said, because he's pulling out of the fight because he is so disrespected by Poirier that at one point he wants to beat him for the disrespect, and the second time, no, I will take the money from you. That's how disrespected I am. Not the $500,000 donation, but the fight money. Sure, Conor can fight anybody on July 10th, anybody at UFC 264, but even Conor knows that if he pulls that shenanigan, he's not getting a fight that gets him closer to the title, and he wants the title. Because business is always better. It always has a bigger dollar sign on it, even when you're Conor McGregor, when you're the world champion. You need Dustin Poirier, and you need this fight. But as always, it's Conor McGregor, and he needs the attention. And I would swear by now that there is a cordial relationship in a business manner between Poirier and McGregor, and I believe that that has led to what is a great salesmanship job. They will throw down. They will give us a great fight July 10th, but be assured they are fighting July 10th, and Conor McGregor wants you to remember that. So those are really the two topics that are on my cage mind this week. And now I want to jump back over to the highlights. You got to love knees to the head of a grounded opponent. I want that rule everywhere. I like that rule for one championship. And Adriano Moraes defeats Demetrius Johnson. Yeah, this is how long it's been since I recorded a podcast. It was before the first TNT show last time you guys heard from me. Moraes does it. He pulls off the upset. To most of us, it's an upset. To the people who won championship, they said it's not an upset. How can it not be an upset? 3-0 in their promotion, DJ. Moraes had won 5 of 6. Their dominance was not comparable. Moraes and Johnson, do I believe they both made 135? Sure. Do I believe in that gravity hydration test as much as I, in my soul, wanted to believe that fighters were not dehydrating or were not cutting massive amounts of weight for one championship? I don't believe that. I believe Adriano Moraes was cutting, but I do believe he was the winner, and congratulations to him. Eddie Alvarez, man, that was as bad as having a gun pulled on you, how he was robbed. The strikes early, 1 or 2 may have straight to the back of the head, but after the ref gave his warning, everything was legal, and that was a horrible decision. Larry Lapicus was beat. Eddie Alvarez deserves better, and hopefully they can rebook him for one of these one-on-TNT shows. It's disappointing to honestly see some of these fight cards falling apart. I believe the one-on-TNT 2 coming up here that we'll talk about, only 2 fights on the main card. What is that? And honestly, on the prelims, I believe that there's John Wayne Parr versus Nikki Holtzkin coming up in 2 weeks on the prelims. How is that going to be a prelim one championship? But yeah, this whole endeavor with TNT is not working out the way I hope for. I don't know if the American audience is going to take to one championship. But if you watch the early prelims on BR Live, Rug is special, man. The Senegali wrestler, no fear, coming in, throwing bombs, dumps his opponent on the ground, and gets the job done. The heavyweight is a special beast. Go over, because we said B, to Bellator 256. This is the Caged Minds MMA Show portion of the show, if you didn't notice, guys. Lyoto Machida, he wins the first round with some big body kicks, and then the speed advantage that he had over Ryan Bader went away, and from there, it was the Ryan Bader wrestling show. A takedown with 2 minutes left in the second. 3 minutes left in the third, 4 minutes left in the fourth, and 4.5 minutes left in the fifth. The takedowns came earlier as the night went longer, and the damage got bigger. Ryan Bader, devastating. The Lyoto Machida of old is gone. He is barely a 3-round fighter with his gas tank at this point, depending on who he's fighting. I think we've seen the best of the Dragon, and I wonder if we see any more of Machida, who is a legend of the sport, and I hope we honestly don't see him fight again. Now, for one of the prospects that really shined out of the card, it was Adam Borash, rebounding from a rough first round to bust Jeremy Kennedy up with his jab in the second round and land some brutal calf kicks in the third round, recouping from the loss in the Grand Prix, learning the Hungarian fighter, the best Hungarian fighter that's in prominent MMA. It was a good performance. The card opened up with Goichi Yamauchi and Dan Moret, and I'm not sure really how that fight was scored in the manner that it was. Moret, it looked to stagger with some right hands early. Yamauchi, though, head kick, rear naked choke, and Kimura attempts seemed to come back really hard at the end of the second round, or end of the first round. Second round, it was all control from Yamauchi. I didn't agree with the judges there. Jumped over it, gotta mention it. Kat Zingano got the best finish on the main card. Olivia Parker gets taken down, is actually able to sweep, get on top, and from there, Zingano locks up the armbar, and the only thing that I've wanted to hear from Kat since she's been in Bellator is now she's called for the title fight. Now that Leslie Smith jumped over her to fight Cyborg, Zingano says, I want the winner, and that's the only thing I've wanted to hear from Kat Zingano since she's joined Bellator, is that she wants the title fight, is that she wants the big fight, and that she's done fighting these obscure, no-name newcomers. Go over to UFC on ABC2. Mentioned earlier the main event, Vettori versus Holland, and how that played out. For my money, coming in, the best fight on the card was Arnold Allen versus Sadiq Youssef. And Youssef, a brilliant first 3 minutes of the fight with big punches, a sharp jab, knocking Arnold Allen off his center line and knocking him around the octagon. It was really one of those things where the announcer was saying, Allen has to do something to gain respect. And it was a straight left hand that scores the knockdown in the first round to get the respect. And well, it feels like Youssef is again outworking Allen. Something that you don't really hear about Sadiq Youssef, outworking people with his strikes. It was a high kick and a right hand knockdown for Allen that again stuns Youssef. Those two huge moments would win the fight for Arnold Allen, who would keep the fight in the clinch in the third to avoid the big knockout. Arnold Allen, unbeaten in the UFC, he hasn't got some of the big fights. He was supposed to fight Josh Emmett. He was supposed to fight Jeremy Stevens. Those fell out. He's a name to keep an eye on. Another youngster in that amazing 145-pound division. Don't look now, but Mackenzie Dern is moving up the rankings. Since working with Jason Perillo, we've seen her striking evolving, and it's not like it's this incredible technical boxing, but Dern's willingness to let that right hand go is incredible. She's moved up 6 spots with her submission win over Nina Nunes. Nobody knows how Nunes gone for 2 years. It's not your fault that you went to have a baby, but you're gone for 2 years. It's inexplicable to stay in the rankings. And Mackenzie Dern, by submitting the number 5 ranked fighter with an armbar, she got her there with a relentless single leg, great grappling, world-class grappling, a right hand that she was firing without remorse and without fear. It's a little weird. Mackenzie Dern is now number 5 in the world. Not to mention, Mike Perry has kind of forgot how to fight. He can't close the distance, doesn't get his head off the center line. It was a one-side beating by Daniel Rodriguez, busting up Perry with the jab, slamming home body kicks, was faster, more accurate, more creative, was just all around more skillful, saw things coming, got out of the way better. I mean, what the heck? It's just incredible to see the downhill slope of Mike Perry. 1 fight left on his deal. He's done so much for the UFC in terms of putting his body on the line and delivering fun fights for the fans that I believe we do see him once more in that octagon. Matthews Gamrot, best lightweight out of Poland, and we finally saw his skill set fully on display. It was a rough debut. Lost a split decision. Didn't feel like himself. Now in this fight, trying to get it to the takedowns, I was sure that Scott Holtzman was going to be looking for was going to score the knockout with an uppercut, the way that Gamrot was just diving for these takedowns. But in the second round, Gamrot, after literally it looked like tiring out Holtzman with a side-to-side movement, was able to get the bull to come forward towards the Matador. A clean 1-2, and that right hand down the pipe, or left hand down the pipe from the southpaw was wicked. Stunned Holtzman, who looked like out on his feet, flew in with a couple punches. Great finish from Matthews Gamrot, who of course is training over at American Top Team. Fight of the night had to be John Mcdessey versus Ignacio Bajamundes. Bajamundes missed weight slightly, though, with his reach and length advantage, looked good early, picking apart Mcdessey. But when Mcdessey was able to hurt Bajamundes, he went to town, landed a plethora of shots in the cage, and was busting up Bajamundes. The damage, the striking count was close. The damage was one-sided in favor of John Mcdessey, landing the bigger shots. The jabs were equal. The damage, Bajamundes is just a bloody mess. And the biggest finish of the card, that was courtesy of Juris Downho. If you have not seen it, he caught Jorgen De Castro coming in with a right overhand off the left side of the head, and De Castro was down in a scary fashion. The German had not been in the cage in over 2 years. What a return to the UFC. As we wrap up the results, you also got to remember now 14-0 in the bantamweight division. Welsh fighter Jack Shore. The dude can strike. He can defensive wrestle. He can offensive wrestle. He is definitely someone to keep your attentions on. So over to the highlight. We got done with the highlights. Let's head over to the headlines. TJ Laramie is out. Damon Jackson is now going to face Luke Saunders. We're talking about featherweight action on May 1st. Got a trio of fights added to the UFC's May 8th event, including lightweights in a top 15 matchup. Number 15, Gregor Gillespie, is going to take on number 12, Diego Ferreira. Jimmy Flick announces his retirement, and Francisco Figueiredo will now be fighting J.P. Bays. Also on that May 8th card, you're going to see a top 15 welterweight matchup. Number 11, Jeff Neal against number 9, Neil Magny. June 26th, you're going to see Renato Moicano against Jai Herbert. That one's a featherweight matchup. And Warley Alves against Ramazan Emeev has been added, and that one is a welterweight contest. UFC 264, that July 10th card you may have heard of, has added a heavyweight matchup pitting Greg Hardy against Taia Tuivasa. July 17th, UFC Fight Night has added at bantamweight Khalid Taha versus Sergey Moraes. And at flyweight, Amir Albazid will be fighting Ode Osborne. In a top 10 women's bantamweight bout for July 24th. Number 3 ring Aspen Ladd is going to be taking on number 9 Macy Chasson. And in women's flyweight action, also a top 15 matchup. Number 15 Miranda Maverick is going to meet number 14 Macy Barber. News on Bellator 258. Syed Awad is going to be facing Nate Andrews in a lightweight matchup, and Keith Lee has had to pull out of his bantamweight bout. That's going to come now see Henry Corrales against Johnny Campbell. In a bit of PFL news, a heart condition has forced David Mershaw to retire, and he will be replaced this season by Curtis Millender, including in the main event of the opening card of the 2021 PFL, where Millender will be taking on former Bellator world champion Rory McDonald. Also in PFL news, on June 10th, if you have not heard, will be the official MMA debut of boxing world champion Clarissa Shields. That night now, June 10th, becomes a huge night for the PFL. This week, as we said, you have one on TNT 2. 2 fights on the main card there. Christian Lee defending the one lightweight title against Timothy Nachichenko. Timothy scored the knockout win over Eddie Alvarez in Alvarez's one debut. Lee, a wrestler and a striker from Hawaii, the brother of the infamous Lee sisters, Victoria Lee, who the 16-year-old phenom earlier made her debut in one championship. 16-year-old making her professional debut. Insane, following in the footsteps of their eldest sister, Angela Lee, the former one champion who is now awaiting a child. So you have Christian trying to carry on that family legacy, defending the lightweight title. In the main event, we have a women's Muay Thai strawweight bout. Janet Todd and Anne Hagestad. Like I said, I don't know if one's going to get it done or draw the American audience with these cards. I wish that they'd get more respect. I just don't know if it's going to happen. Bellator, the light heavyweight Grand Prix, is starting this week. That's the Vadim Nemkov Phil Davis rematch is our headliner. It was a close fight the first time. I just got to go with Nemkov, not because I'm a prisoner of the moment, but because of the violence and destruction that he brings towards the octagon. There's just more impact, more influence, more destruction from Nemkov, where Davis, I feel like if he's not on top of you, he's trying to point fight you. And I'm going to go just with Nemkov in that scenario. The other light heavyweight Grand Prix bout has Corey Anderson against Devletaz Yagshimuradov. Yagshimuradov making his Bellator debut. I haven't seen him fight. I know he did a lot of great in ACB. Got to think he's the underdog coming over to take on an overtime Corey Anderson, who has an incredible jab and presses a pace like few light heavyweights can. We also get a grudge match on this card where Paul Daly and Sabah Hamasi are going to fight. I believe this could be Daly's retirement fight. Hamasi, a big knockout in his last fight. Both these guys are going to come out to bang. We know Daly Semtex, most of his wins by knockout. You also get names like Raymond Daniels and Pedro Carvalho on the undercard. Victor Nemkov, the brother of Adim, also on there. Lance Gibson Jr. is going to be fighting on the same card as his stepmother, Julia Budd. So you have some interesting treats there for the Bellator prelims. That's on Showtime, the main card. That's Bellator 257. UFC Fight Pass is going to be your home for LFA 104, where Aaron McKenzie and Brandon Phillips are going to battle out for Sooner State supremacy. It's there in Oklahoma at the Shawnee, Oklahoma, the Grand Casino. McKenzie, LFA vet, nice win streak going, good finishing ability. Phillips returning to MMA 3 years away. Been kickboxing in that time. Go over to CagedMinds.com. We got interviews going up. Joel Bauman and Chris Brown both going to be on this card. Joel 3-1. The one loss is to Jordan Young. Joel is at 85er. The one loss is up at 205 on 10 days notice. So definitely a dude to keep an eye on. Timothy Tevis from Hawaii also on this card, a former Hawaiian champion who has a win in Titan FC. Also, Thomas Peterson, 3-0 heavyweight. We always love to see heavyweight prospects, so there are a ton of reasons to watch LFA 104 on UFC Fight Pass. As I've mentioned, Robert Whittaker, Kelvin Gastelum is the main event of UFC Fight Night. They originally were supposed to fight in 2019. Hernia surgery after the weigh-ins for Whittaker. Gastelum, he ended a 3-fight skid with his last win over Ian Heinrich. You got to give Whittaker a title shot if he gets past Gastelum. That's 3 top 10 wins since losing the title. Jeremy Stephens, 28 wins, 19 by knockout. He returns to 155 pounds, taking on Dakar Close, who's going to want to keep this one close and wrestle. Hopefully, we'll see a big Stephens knockout. You know, that's what everybody's hoping for. I believe they may have shared the mat together at Jackson Wink before. Maybe they missed each other, like passing ships in the night. But in the feature fight, you're going to see Chase Sherman against Andrei Arlovski. For the smart money, Arlovski's going to look to take this to the ground. Sherman pops his jab, looks for leg kicks, and tries to keeps this one standing. The prelims, bantamweight matchup, pitting Anthony Burchak versus Tony Gravely. That's one to circle. Burchak, he got finished in his last fight, but a nasty rear naked choke 1 fight before that. Looked to have taken his grappling to another level. Maybe was just a little shell-shocked on the short notice fight. Tony Gravely, he's looking to turn things around, trying to get this one to the ground, but you have to watch out for the Burchak submissions. The card opens up literally with a great fight. Austin Hubbard, who we've seen cracking with his hands against Dakota Bush, making his debut on short notice, replacing Natan Leve. Bush, a back-taking rear naked choke specialist. Got to circle and definitely highlight the women's strawweight bout that will see 5-0 Lupita Godinez, the LFA women's champion, making her debut against Jessica Penne. I've had people tell me about Godinez, and I've seen it in person or seen it in action through, stream. Some of the fastest hands that you will see in the strawweight division, and I'm talking about elite level speed and accuracy with her boxing already. And this is going to be a fight against Jessica Penne, the former Invicta champion, the former UFC title challenger, coming back from over 2 years away. And you also on the prelims have a heavyweight contest where it's tough winner Juan Espinino. You know he was impressive in the last fight. So impressive after so long away. Going to be taking on Alexander Romanov. Romanov at 13-0. Espinino 10-1. Espinino, a scarf hold choke of Jeff Hughes at UFC 253 back in September. That was his first fight since 2018. So he needs to get things moving. About 42 years old for the Spaniard. Well, Romanov from Moldova, 30 years old, as I said, 13-0, and so far has submitted Roku Martinez and Marcos Rogerio de Lima in the octagon. That one, low-key, is going to be incredible, and one of those guys is probably getting a fight in the rankings with an impressive victory here. So you got a lot of reasons to tune into those prelims. I'm feeling them. I'm really feeling those prelims more than I'm even feeling the main card this week for UFC Fight Night. It's Whittaker versus Gastelum. It's going to be a great week of MMA. Again, Wednesday, 1 on TNT, 2. On Thursday, take a deep breath. You get a night off. On Friday, you get that double header. Bellator and LFA. And then Saturday, it's the UFC. So we've went through Micah Frankel's Caged Minds and the Caged Minds MMA Show. It's been a wild ride and a great journey. Your exits are coming up here, here, and here. Thank you for joining me.